All right, let me just kind of brief everybody where we are right now with Northville Downs, and I want to respond in my own way to some of the questions, not all of them, because I think some of them have already been asked and answered in the past. 2 years ago, we had a discussion about a tree ordinance, and many of you in this room were also opposed to the tree ordinance at that time. You had lawn signs, you had websites, you had other things going on. You videoed us like Mr. Zantop is doing, which he has every right to do. Thank you, sir. We had during that time, we had a spirited discussion about property rights, right? And I think you were very passionate about that, Chuck. In this case, we have a property rights issue, and Northville Downs, whether we like them or not, bought this property fair and square from a company called Hillside Development. Hillside Development acquired this property when we lost this property in the Michigan Supreme Court back in, I don't know, 2015 or 2016. And many of us up here know that story, and I don't want to rehash that. Whether we like it or not, Northville Downs owns this property. It has never been owned by the MITC authority. The MITC does not own any property, okay? All the property along 5 Mile between Napier and Beck, which most of it, almost all of it at one time, was prison property. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, Mr. Vorva, you were a cop back then. People escaped from those prisons all the time, okay? And this was a nasty, ugly prison that was, part of it in the back was built on a landfill that was created by the city of Detroit many years ago. So I say that because right now, if I were to look on the Plymouth Township side of 5 Mile Road, going from west to east, I have a large parcel that is owned still by the city of Detroit. And that parcel has been approved by our planning commission through public process, public notice, public discourse. A building is going to go there that will be a warehousing operation, probably in the neighborhood of 350 to 400,000 square feet. It's one of the reasons why we want to do a solar ordinance, because if we're going to have all that rooftop, we should let them have the option to generate electricity there. Then we have the current site owned by Northville Downs. Then Crossing Ridge, we have a site at the corner that is for sale still. And then we have a larger site that was formerly owned by Adient, which was purchased by a investing firm out of, I believe, North Carolina. And they, as you drive out there right now, they're building another large warehousing facility, probably 350,000 square feet. They still have room to grow as well. I also want to remind everybody that none of these parcels were on the tax roll. We collected 0 taxes on there, and I believe we as elected officials have an obligation to maximize taxable value for our community so that we don't have to raise taxes. I think we also have an obligation to do our due diligence to see and ascertain if we can generate revenue from any business or entity that comes into the community. We don't always win that battle. We don't collect any tax revenue on Henry Ford Hospital, and it's a hospital too, just I want to add that. We don't collect revenue on Henry Ford Hospital because state law doesn't allow that. We were in the tax tribunal. We took that all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court a couple years ago with USA Hockey because they wanted basically to operate tax-free. And we won that one, so we do collect taxes off of them. So we win some and we lose some. Further, as you go further east along 5 Mile, you have then the Dohoko prison itself. That is, of all the sites, it is the most contaminated. All due diligence has been done on all of these parcels. And I'm not going to rehash that whole thing again. It has been well stated by Dr. Harless, and also there is a journal, a newspaper out there that he was he was quoted, and I can't get the local news doesn't really exist the way it used to, and so we take what we can get. And then we have then the existing site, which is the Home Depot and the other stuff. Across the street on the Northville side, and I'll summarize this one more quickly. We have Northville Lumber coming in. I just found out today that Verita is coming in on the Northville side at the northwest corner of Ridge and 5. There is also tonight, the Northville Planning Commission, I believe, is meeting, and they are supposed to approve a 98-unit townhouse development at Ridge Road, just north of where Northville Downs is looking to locate. So, again, the private property, business decisions going through the proper procedural channels. And of course, we all know at the northwest corner of Beck and 5 is a hotel and other amenities, along with a lot of residential, and there's more residential coming. The plan is to build a large apartment building right further north on Beck Road. So the MITC was conceived in the 2010 timeframe. I was brought into the MITC in 2011 as your state representative, and I demolished the prison. We transferred the land to the Michigan Land Bank to the extent that we could, and proceeded to develop the site. I am very happy to announce again that we are getting $10 million from the state of Michigan to rebuild 5 Mile, widen it, strengthen it, to accommodate not Northville Downs, but to accommodate everybody else that's going to be using that corridor to generate jobs, tax revenue, and benefit for the communities. I'm a Republican. I served under Governor Rick Snyder for 6 years, and I remember when Michigan had 15% unemployment rate, and we moved heaven and earth to get us down to the unemployment rate that we are at today, and I'm very proud of that. So I don't forget as a Republican that that job creation and economic development are critical to our state's success and to our local, our community success as well. A couple other things I just want to mention here. There's been comparisons made between this and Pinnacle. The Pinnacle racetrack was a thoroughbred track. This is harness racing. I think that's well understood now. The gentleman who created Pinnacle was a multimillionaire banker who, in my opinion, did not have the business wherewithal. I asked him, because Mr. Bernhard correctly pointed out, I was the environment director for Wayne County for 6.5 years. I ran the state's second largest environmental protection agency, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm the guy who made sure that Pinnacle complied with all of the environmental regulations, stormwater management, and flood control for the people of Huron Township. I'm not involved in economic development when I was at Wayne County. Had I been, I probably would have told this guy to rethink his business plan, because when I asked the developer of Pinnacle, what's your business plan? He said, people love horses. That was his business plan. So, I made sure he complied with environmental policy, but I wasn't there to advise him on business policy. A lot of discussion about gambling, like Bob and many others up here. I do not gamble. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't go to casinos, but I can tell you, folks, the casino industry right now in Southeast Michigan is hurting because of this. And I can gamble on this thing all day long. I can bet on sports. I can bet on baseball. I can bet on all sorts of stuff. And so, if you don't like gambling, then this is really the thing that you should be concerned with.
Buy lottery tickets.
Yeah, and you buy the lottery ticket too, which is all controlled by the state. So let's just make that clear. Northville, and I'm not here. Well, I'm going to get into that in a second. So, talked about that. $25 million to build Northville Downs new facility is what they are paying for. That there's no tax dollars involved with this. The tax revenue that is generated at the site goes to the MITC authority, because it's a brownfield authority that covers the entire area. It's not a tax giveaway, it's not corporate welfare, and it's not some, plot of some sort. The man who came up with the Brownfield law was John Engler, and he was a good Republican, and he wanted to do that because we wanted to rehabilitate contaminated lands, put them back on the tax roll, create jobs and economic development, because that's what I believe in. And you probably voted for it, Jerry. Let's see. So let's back up again to property rights. Northville Downs owns this site. They came to us, and they have lawyers. They have a lawyer here, Mike Cox, former Attorney General, no slouch. They have another lawyer who's based in Buffalo, New York. And so we have Kevin Bennett, we have me, for what it's worth. And we have we've had a lot of discussions about the planned unit development. So what we are asking of them, we're saying to them, look, if you want to settle here, if you want to build a racetrack with all of the same stuff that you did up in Northville City, kind of like, here's a contract, here's our list of demands, here's what we expect that you do at that site. We're not arguing over gambling. We're not going to argue over the morality of what we're doing. This is a business transaction, and we have to obey the law on that. The law does not allow us to make moral decisions or religious decisions or personal decisions. We have to follow the law. So the planned unit development calls for a contract between the township and the developer. That process began back in January, February with the Planning Commission. I attended that meeting. I left shortly after, but I know it went on for at least 3 hours. Then the Planning Commission met again for another 3 hours. We've now had probably 4 hours worth of public comment. So to say that this is something that was under the table or behind closed doors or a secret deal is not accurate. We have followed the law in every step of the way. Proper notice has been put out there. We had a full house at all the Planning Commission meetings, so somebody certainly got the notice that there was something going on with Northville Downs. Planning Commission again voted unanimously twice for this project and referred it to us. I cannot get into all the details of the planned unit development negotiations because this is still attorney-client privileged. Our client,
you mean
Kevin's.
You don't mean the PUD. You mean
no, both.
The community.
No, both documents. The PUD
is set up by the Planning Commission.
PUD was set forth by the Planning Commission, but we have to provide the details. Okay, we have to figure it all. We have to put the teeth to it. Okay.
As far as the land use goes?
As far as the
community benefit.
No, the PUD also has requirements on what we can do on the four corners of the land and what we expect of them. So we're talking about.
Oh, you mean for our recreational use?
Not necessarily. That's one element, but also public health and safety, lighting, hours of operation, noise control, traffic, all of those things are all taken into consideration with the PUD. Then I requested a community benefit agreement. PUDs are not unusual to Plymouth Township. I think we've had at least 30 since going back to the 1980s. Again, this is not some sneaky thing. St. John's Resort is a PUD.
Jesus Christ.
Henry Ford Hospital is a PUD.
The business park, Hillside, was a PUD.
Hillside was a PUD. So there's numerous other examples. Commercial, residential, industrial, and whatnot. So I had also requested a community benefit agreement, and though discussions over that are also ongoing as well, and that is done between myself, Kevin, Mike Cox, and then also the attorney I'm now involving the attorney from Buffalo. What I have noticed, and I think we can all see this with our eyes, is the PUD process takes a long time under normal conditions. The PUD for the so-called Elks Lodge project took months to work out. The PUD project for Henry Ford Hospital was originally approved by the former board in 2015, I believe. That was for a a shopping facility that then morphed into a hospital. So that PUD had to be amended on the fly. Certainly with St. John's, we've seen the same thing. So on the, what I've noticed though, and I think what we all are seeing is a lack of urgency maybe on their part. And I think that has a lot to do, and again, I'm not talking out of school, this is not attorney-client privileged. I can look with my own eyes. If I drive up to Northville City right now, they're still operational. I'm not seeing any shovel in the ground. I'm not seeing any condos being built. Northville City wants to build 450 condominium unit with with daylighting the Rouge River, a roundabout, a farmer's market, and they have no money for any of that. There's no money for a roundabout. There's no money to daylight the river. There's no money for they don't even have a site yet for a farmer's market. So common sense tells me that maybe Northville Downs may end up staying up there for a while. I don't know. They haven't told us that. So I'm just saying, we have to follow the law. We have to follow the process. And I know it's frustrating to not know everything that's going on, but to do that puts the township at risk from a legal standpoint. I'm trying to avoid litigation. I don't want to, and I'm not saying we're going to get sued, so don't misinterpret that. But we have to always be cautious of that. And, so we have to follow the rules. We have to follow due process. We have to make sure that they're getting their day, their day in court. And negotiations are ongoing, and we're doing this in a very methodical way. And I'm personally doing that so that we can, if this goes forward, that there will be a generous benefit to the people of Plymouth Township. And I think we're obligated to do that, to see if we can get the best deal possible. Knowing all the liabilities that are abundantly known, and the potential benefits that are out there. But again, I know Plymouth Township politics can be very rough and tumble. I'm the poster child for that. I was taken off the ballot. I ran a write-in campaign. I won a write-in campaign against the entire Republican establishment in the state of Michigan from here to Washington, D.C., okay? So I know there's a lot of passion on this issue. My request is that everybody just take a deep breath and let the process play itself out. And we hear you, we understand the pros and cons, but let us take these issues back to the table so that we can see if we can work out a deal with Northville Downs and give them the due process that any developer, every developer deserves due process. We have to extend the same legal rights to this organization. All right, I'm going to cancel the August 1st study session and the regular meeting of August 8th. We talked about that earlier this year when we set our schedule. Some good news, we did get our first senior bus, the new senior vans that were generously, half of them were paid for with ARPA money, and the other half, one bus was partially paid for by the Pulte Family Trust, which owns St. John's Resort, and the other one was paid by a generous donor on behalf of Park, the Plymouth recreation facility. That's it. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Stewart, seconded by Mr. Borba. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.